אנחנו מוצאים את הספור עם זרה שמשון?
האם זה באמת סגולה בדוקה? הסגולה ללמוד בזה? מה? כן.
Erev Tov, good evening everyone. We are in the Zera Shimshon on Parshas Korach, and we're going to do Os Ches, section number 8, in the Zera Shimshon, where he talks about the extreme importance of removing ourselves from machlokes, from arguments and fights and disagreements. We should remove ourselves from inappropriate disagreements. We should remove ourselves from those kinds of things. Before we begin the actual learning, tonight's learning is dedicated for a refuah shlema to Velvel Wolf Ze'ev ben Leah, and it is also Le'iloi Nishmas Ruvain ben Shaul. The Zera Shimshon begins quoting a Gemara in Maseches Sanhedrin. Perek Yud Aleph. Oh, I'm sorry. I have to read a pasuk first before we begin. A pasuk from the Parsha. This is our Parsha, Parshas Korach. This is Perek Tes Zayin Pasuk Chaf Hey. What's happening here is, of course, the Torah portion begins, the Parsha begins with the story of Korach leading a revolt against the leadership of Moshe, against Moshe and Aaron and their decisions and their leadership. And Moshe tries to do everything he can to resolve the situation peacefully. He tries to speak to Korach, and he tries to speak to two of Korach's important followers, Dasan ve'Aviram, and here's what the pasuk says about that. Vayoka Moshe vayelech el Dasan ve'Aviram. And Moshe got up and he went to Dasan and Aviram. Vayelchu acharav ziknei Yisrael, and after Moshe followed the elders of bnei Yisrael. And Moshe had to go to them because they refused to come to him. And so he said, I'll be the bigger man. I'll go to them and I'll try and see if I can speak reasonably to them and placate them and get them to stop this revolt and this rebellion, which was obviously a very dangerous situation for all of the people involved. So now let's see the Zera Shimshon. Perek Yud Aleph de Sanhedrin, the 11th parak, which is the last chapter in Masechta Sanhedrin, quotes this pasuk: Vayoka Moshe vayelech el Dasan va'Aviram. And Moshe got up and he went to Dasan and Aviram. Omer Reish Lakish said about this: Mikan, from here, from this pasuk, she'ein machzikin b'machlokes. We learn that you should never continue or hold on to a machlokes, meaning Moshe was doing everything he could to end this machlokes, to end this rebellion, this revolt, and this disagreement, this very severe disagreement. And so Reish Lakish says we can learn from this that you should do everything you can if you're ever involved in a machlokes, in a public argument, in a feud. You should do everything you can to end it. The Omar Rav, because Rav said, Kol hamachzik b'machlokes, anyone who holds on to, meaning they maintain, they continue an argument, over belav, they are transgressing a negative commandment. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, a little later in our parsha of Korach, v'lo yihiyeh chekorach v'cha'adaso, and he will not be like Korach and his group, his followers. Ka'asher diber Hashem biyad Moshe lo, like that which Hashem spoke through the hand of Moshe lo to him, or regarding him, which is a reference to Elazar ben Aaron HaKohen, Elazar the Kohen. The reference is that Elazar went. Moshe told Elazar to go and pick up all of the fire pans that were used in the ceremony in our parsha, where the people who were followers of Korach tried to show that Hashem would accept their offering and not Aaron's, or maybe their offerings along with Aaron's, and of course they lost their lives because of that. And so Elazar went and he picked up the fire pans and he brought them and he was able to hammer them into a covering for the outer mizbeach, the outer altar where sacrifices were brought. So that's who's being referred to when it uses the word lo, to him. This was a mitzvah from Hashem through Moshe to him, to Elazar. Rav Ashi Omar, this is the Gemara in Sanhedrin continuing. Rav Ashi said, Ro'oi lehitstareya, a person who continues, maintains, and stays in an argument without extricating himself or herself is fit to be struck with tsara'as, with leprosy. And now Rav Ashi is going to prove that based on the similarity between two psukim, as we'll see. Ksiv hacha, it's written over here regarding the story of Korach, biyad Moshe lo, in the hand, through the hand of Moshe to him. Those three words are here regarding the revolt of the people rebelling against Moshe in Korach's rebellion. Viksiv Hosam, and there's a pasuk over there, and this pasuk we will recognize from when Hashem was talking to Moshe, having sent him on the mission to take Bnei Yisrael out of Mitzrayim, back in Sefer Shmos. So it says, Vayomer Hashem lo od, and Hashem said, furthermore to him, meaning to Moshe, Have no yodcha b'cheikecha, bring your hand into your chest. And then when Moshe took out his hand, it was covered with tsaras. So Rav Ashi says the fact that it talks over here with the rebellion of Korach, it uses biyad Moshe lo, it uses those words, and over there regarding the episode with Moshe and his hand being covered with tsaras, it says Vayomer Hashem lo. So he compares the two incidents, and he says if you participate in a machlokas and you don't extricate yourself, then you're fit to be struck with tsaras. Ad kan lashono, until here is a quote from the Gemara in Masechet Sanhedrin. So we see clearly, it's very clear in this Gemara, that it's a very, very important thing not to get involved in arguments and feuds and all kinds of public disagreements. And if we are become involved in one, to extricate ourselves from it by placating the other parties or doing whatever we can to end it and resolve it, or at least to get out of it, not to be involved in it. And if a person doesn't do that, Reish Lakish said he violated a command in the Torah, and Rav Ashi says that person is fit to be struck with tsaras. Now the Zera Shimshon asks a question. Koshe, there's a difficulty here. Lama belav zeh, why is it regarding this prohibition about not being involved in arguments? Amar HaKosav, the pasuk says, V'lo yiyeh Korach, and he should not be like Korach, v'lo kosav lav gereda. And it doesn't just simply write the prohibition by itself. Kemo, for example, lo sirtzach, do not commit a murder, do not kill. Lo sinaf, do not commit adultery. V'chule. Shelo kasav, in those cases, the Torah just told you what not to do as plainly and as simply as possible, and it did not write Lo sirtzach kiploni, don't commit a murder like so-and-so did. Lo sinaf kiploni, and don't commit adultery like so-and-so did. So the Zera Shimshon is saying we have countless examples in the Torah where the Torah just tells us not to do something and just tells us the prohibition. It doesn't connect the prohibition to a person and say, don't do it like so-and-so did it. But here it says, V'lo yiyeh Korach, don't be like Korach. And so the Zera Shimshon is asking why. Why did the Torah find it necessary to connect the prohibition of becoming involved in maintaining arguments, connected to Korach and saying, don't do this because this will make you like Korach. You'll be like Korach if you do this. Next paragraph, V'yesh lomar, and we can say, Shebo hakosav lahashmianu. The pasuk is coming to teach us Ta'am chomer hachet, the reasoning as to why this sin is so serious. Shall call me shemachzik b'machlokes, because anyone who does maintain and stay involved in an argument, beinim yeh oluv o olev, whether or not it is the aggrieved party or the aggriever, meaning both parties, the person who started the argument and insulted or hurt and grieved someone in some way, and also the person who is aggrieved, who was hurt or insulted, that person too, both of them have an obligation to end the machlokes, to resolve the problem. Umemela anu magiyim lesof ta'uso uvitivshuso shel Korach. Indirectly, through learning about this prohibition and how we have to end it, we will reach the end of understanding fully the mistake and the foolishness that Korach demonstrated. Shehare kol echad miyisrael yeshlo al panav tselem v'demus Elokim. Every member of Bnei Yisrael, every member of Klal Yisrael, of the Jewish people, has on his face the image and the likeness of Hashem. V'nimtze, and we find shemi shemivazeh chavero. We find, therefore, that someone who humiliates or embarrasses or insults his friend, mivazeh hashchina, God forbid, it's as if they are insulting and embarrassing and humiliating the divine presence, ha'omedes alav, that stands on that person. Ve'omru zichronim levracha, and Chazal, in a different Gemara in Maseches Sanhedrin, said, B'shah she'adam mitzta'er, at a time when a person is suffering, and in that Gemara, they're not just talking about any person suffering, they're talking about a chote, they're talking about people who are suffering because of punishments for things they did wrong. But when a person suffers, Shechina ma omeres, what does the Shechina say? Kalani meroshi, kalani mizeroi. I am distressed from my head, I am distressed from my arm, meaning it's as if kaviyachol, the Shechina, the divine presence, feels pain when human beings are suffering. Ve'af im yachsor zeh hane'elev v'yevaze oso, and even if it's the aggrieved person who was insulted and might think it's justifiable to go back and insult the one who insulted him, yiyechote, he is considered a sinner. Shehare mevaze oso tselem v'demus sheyesh lo leha'olev. Because when he insults the person who insulted him, or he humiliates the person who humiliated him, then he is likewise, it's as if he likewise is insulting and humiliating the Shekhinah, the divine presence, which exists in the other person, in the one who insulted him, just as it exists in him, right? The Dumus, the Tselem Elokim, is a part of every member of Klal Yisrael. And whether or not you're the person who received an insult, or you're the person who insulted another person, or whether you're a person who was insulted and now you went back and insulted, if you're insulting or humiliating or embarrassing someone or maintaining a machlokas with someone, then you are, it's as if you are ignoring the divine presence, the Tselem Elokim, in that person. Ve'od, top of the next column on the next page. Ve'od, and furthermore, she'eno rashai, a person is not permitted to do this. She'im hamelech malchei hamlochim, if Hashem, the King of all kings, dehainu diyukno shenisbaze imo, and Hashem's presence was humiliated by the person insulting the other person, mochel al elbono, if Hashem can forgive the insult that was done to his image, hu ein lo lios yoser choshev miboro, then the other person cannot possibly consider himself more important than Hashem. And now the Zera Shimshon, to support that idea, quotes a pasuk from Eov, ha'enosh me'elokai yitzdak, can a person be more righteous from Hashem than Hashem? Should a person ever take the position that even though Hashem forgives other people, he is not going to forgive other people? Can a person, so to speak, be more indignant and more insulted and more makbid, more careful about his honor and his kavod than Hashem is? No, obviously not. So therefore, if Hashem, whose tselem, whose image is insulted, forgives the person who did the insulting, then certainly the human being who was insulted must forgive the person who insulted him and not insult them back and not continue the machlokas. Bitmiya, that pasuk in Eov is asking the words as a question. It's not making a statement that says a person is more righteous than God. No, of course, that's not the meaning of the pasuk. The pasuk is saying, can a person be more righteous than God? It's a rhetorical question because obviously a person cannot and should not act in a way that as if they're more righteous than Hashem. Vidayo le'eved liyos kirabo. It's enough for a servant to be at his highest level, to be equal to his master. A servant should never strive or act like he's greater than his master. And so too with human beings, we should never, of course, obviously act as if somehow we're on some kind of higher level or deserve more honor than HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's absolutely absurd to ever, that a person would ever think that way. And therefore the pasuk in our parsha is saying, or said, kamo Korach. A person should not make the mistake that Korach made. He thought he would raise complaints against Moshe, and he ended up going against and arguing with Hashem. And of course, he paid with his life for that mistake of thinking, oh, I'll just try and show how Moshe is making a mistake here, without realizing that Moshe was the Eved Hashem par excellence. Moshe's closeness to Hashem was more than exceeded any other human being. And trying to argue that Moshe wasn't actually representing Hashem's will and wasn't actually the Shliach Hashem, the messenger of Hashem, was a terrible mistake. And we should never follow that by not recognizing that if we are involved in a machlokas with someone, if we're insulting someone, embarrassing them, humiliating them, even if they started it, so to speak, even if the other person started it by insulting us, if we are involved in that and we don't do everything we can to extricate ourselves, then we, God forbid, it's as if we are trying to go against, set ourselves up in opposition to the tselem Elokim, to the image and likeness of Hashem that is represented by every member of Klal Yisrael. So obviously we have to do whatever we can to learn from what happened to Korach and his followers and to apply that to ourselves in our own lives, to always refrain from getting involved in machlokas, and if somehow we do get involved, to resolving the situation as quickly as possible. Ve'od, and more so, af bezu ta'a Korach. Korach made an additional mistake. She'afilu tema she'HaKadosh Baruch Hu tziva leMoshe. Zera Shimshon says Korach should have reasoned and said, even if I'm right, that Hashem did not command Moshe to do all these things, davar zeh, these things that he was commanding the people to do, umelibo bada oso, and from Moshe's own heart he imagined these things. If Moshe actually did, let's imagine, Korach should have thought, even if Moshe did make up some things and tell the people to do them as if it came from Hashem, mikol mokum, nevertheless, ho'il she'ro'a she'HaKadosh Baruch Hu shosak, since Korach saw factually over and over again that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was quiet, umachal v'lo ikev al yado, and Hashem apparently forgave Moshe for doing this and didn't prevent him from doing it. Ve'adarabba, and just the opposite, sharsa hashchina al yedeihem b'mishkan, Hashem caused his divine presence to dwell through their hands, and that's a reference to Moshe and Aaron, who Korach was rebelling against, b'mishkan, in the Mishkan. So Korach should have seen whatever it is that I think Moshe is doing wrong and not truly representing Hashem's will. Look at the facts of what's going on and how Hashem totally supports what Moshe is doing and rests his divine presence on the Mishkan that Moshe gave the commands for and arranged and supervised its building, Korach also should have been quiet. In other words, that should have given Korach pause. Korach should have thought to himself, I really think Moshe is not necessarily always representing Hashem, or maybe he's misrepresenting Hashem, but I see that Hashem is accepting everything Moshe is doing and supporting everything Moshe is doing. So I better be quiet. I better go along with what seems to be Hashem's plan. V'hainu haidi amrinan b'perek gimel din nedarim. And the fact that Korach did not do this, he didn't take into account Hashem's acceptance and support of Moshe. This is similar to what Chazal says say in the third parak of Maseches Nedarim. Omar Rabba bar Rav Huna said, Kol Adam HaKoes, every person who becomes angry, Afilu Shechina Eino Chashuva Kenegdo, even the Shechina, the divine presence, is not given significance from this person's viewpoint or this person's perspective. When a person becomes angry, they can become so enraged and so irrational that they don't even care anymore, God forbid, about the Shekhinah, about Hashem, about what Hashem wants. Shenemar, as a pasuk in Tehillim says, Rasha kigova apo, a wicked person at the height of his anger. And when in that actual pasuk, it continues by saying that person who's at the height of his anger can say, there is no God, chas v'shalom. That person can start acting and thinking as if he doesn't have to take into account the divine presence. He doesn't have to take into account Hashem's existence. Ve'od Amar Rav Ashi, and Rav Ashi said, and this quote from Rav Ashi we saw in the very first paragraph in the Gemara and the 11th parak of Sanhedrin that the Zera Shimshon started with, Ro'oi lihitstareya, a person who stays involved in arguments and doesn't try and get out of the arguments and resolve the problems, that person is fit to be struck with tsaras. Vikoshe, and there's a problem. Ma inyan tsaras ima machlokas. So the Zera Shimshon asks a question: what is the connection between tsaras, being struck with tsaras, and being involved in an argument? Why did Rav Ashi say make a connection between those two things? V'yesh lomar, and we can say dehoil shemisha machzik b'machlokas mizalzel b'kavod shamayim. Since we've established that a person who continues and maintains an argument and stays involved in an argument, it's as if he is, God forbid, trying to make fun of, trying to deride the kavod shamayim, the honor of shamayim. Ve'eno choshesh litzelem hakodesh sheyesh lo ulechavero, and he is not concerned about the image of Hashem, the holy image of Hashem that he possesses, and that his friend, the person he's arguing with, also possesses. When a person is insulting another person, humiliating them, have an inappropriate type machlokas with them, it's as if they've totally forgotten and abandoned the idea that each person he has a tzelem Elokim, and they're not keeping that in mind. They're not acting as if they realize that fact. In Cain, if so, midah keneged midah, then measure for measure yistalek me all of hatzelem hakadosh. Then it's as if that individual's likeness of Hashem, his tzelem Elokim, departs from him. Ukemoshe tirgem onkelos mitzora sagiro. Onkelos translates into Aramaic the word mitzora, which means a person who has been stricken with tsaras. So Onkelos translates it with a word that has to do with closed up, sagar. The word mitzora, Onkelos connects to a person who is closed up. Sagiro de kele. And the Zohar says, what is that? V'amru b'Zohar, and they say in the Zohar, my sagiro, what does it mean that this mitzora is closed up? Sagiro de kele, this is being closed up as if in a prison. Shesagru me'alav kol oros hakidosha. It's as if this person closed himself or herself off from all of the light of holiness. They isolated themselves from the possibility of feeling and being illuminated by the light of kedusha. And because of this, the Torah says about a mitzorah, badad yoshav michutz lamachaneh, he will sit isolated outside of the camp, hakodesh, which is holy. A person with saras had to leave and exit the camps, the camp of Bnei Yisrael in the Midbar, because that was a holy camp, a machaneh kodosh. And therefore he had to leave. The Tomei Yikra, and the Torah also says that a person with saras should go around and call out to others and warn them, Tomei, impure, because the mitzorah who comes in contact with other people, or they come in contact with him, he can make them Tomei. So he has to call out Tomei. Ki behistalek hakedusha, because when the holiness departs from a person, so much so like it does from a mitzorah, tachol hatuma, that's where impurity will take hold and take effect. So a person who is involved in a machlokes and stays involved and maintains it, that person, it's as if they are separating themselves and closing themselves off from Hashem, and therefore they are closing themselves off from kedusha, and that's where tuma, that's where impurity comes in and takes hold of them. Ve'od, bottom paragraph, shemisha machzik b'machlokes ve'rotze lehinake, someone who maintains an argument and wants to take revenge. Mimisha boza oso ocherfo, from someone who embarrassed him or humiliated or cursed him. Al korach tzarich lomar, we are forced to say about such a person, shemipnei shebizoyon ze bo, since this humiliation came, a love shelo kedin, this person thinks that they were unjustifiably humiliated or embarrassed. Mishum hachi rotze lehinake mimenu. That is why this person wants to take revenge from the person who humiliated him or embarrassed him. V'im hayechoshev bidato sheyesh din v'yesh dayin. And if such a person would just take a moment to think about the fact that, of course, there is a judge in this world, and there is justice in this world, all organized by Hashem, all controlled by Hashem. Ve'ein adam nokef etzba'o lemata, and no one even stubs his finger or hurts a finger, ella im kein nigzar alav milamala, unless this was decreed from above, meaning everything that a person experiences is decreed from Shamayim, is decreed by Hashem. If a person would just take a moment to think about that, lo hoyo lo lehinakim, then the person would never think about taking revenge, mimisha oso lo oso hacheruf, from the person who embarrassed him or humiliated or even cursed him. A person's response, the victim's response would not be, I'm so angry with the person, I'm going to go take revenge and do the same thing or worse to him. That wouldn't be the person's response. The person's response would be, why did Hashem make it so that I experienced this embarrassment or this humiliation? What can I learn from that? What type of tshuva do I need to do? What have I done wrong that Hashem arranged things so that I received this negative experience? Ya'an hakol hayor b'ratzon hakel, because everything comes from the will of Hashem. V'zeh, and this person, lo haya ela shliach hamakom, this person who insulted this other person or embarrassed this other person, should be viewed as a messenger of Hashem. Shebechol hakadosh baruch hu oseh shlichuso, because everything that Hashem wants to happen, He sends messengers to make sure that those things happen. Like we find regarding David HaMelech, when David HaMelech's own son rebelled against him, and he had to leave the palace and he had to leave Yerushalayim, and he was on the run trying to escape for his life. He was on the run to save himself along with his officers and his family members and his supporters, and he was leaving as quickly as he could. She'omar, David HaMelech said, Hashem omar lo kalel. Hashem said to this person who is cursing me to curse me. The famous story took place with a man named Shimi ben Gera, who was a member of the family. He was related to Shaul HaMelech. And because David had replaced Shaul HaMelech, Shimi ben Gera, when David HaMelech was on the run from the revolt against him, Shimi ben Gera came out and threw stones at him and cursed him. And one of David's officers said to David, let me just go kill him. Why are we allowing this person to curse you? You're the king. And David said, no, it is Hashem who told him to curse me. I'm being cursed because Hashem wants me to suffer through this experience of being on the run and running for my life and escaping and being cursed and being embarrassed and humiliated. This is all the ratzon of Hashem, and therefore don't do anything to Shimi ben Gera. Nimtza, we find, when we take all of this into account, we find shelefi dato, that according to the thinking and the train of thought of a person who does let himself become angry, who does try and take revenge from another person, who does try to maintain and keep a machlokas and an argument going, we find that what's going on with that person, what must that person be thinking? Ozav Hashem es haaretz. That person is thinking Hashem created the world, but then he left. He's leaving it to people just to do what they want. We don't have to be concerned about what Hashem wants to happen or what Hashem might be causing to happen. Kedas hashotim harishonim, according to the viewpoint of the early fools, meaning those people who came up with the philosophy that yes, there's a creator, and yes, the creator created the world, but then the creator went off to do other things and left the world to its own devices. This person who becomes angry and wants to take revenge and keeps the machlokas going and says, I'm not worried about what Hashem wants or what Hashem might be trying to teach me or the fact that I need to do teshuvah. No, forget about all that. That person is like those early fools who think that Hashem don't control the world. V'nikra kofer ba'ikr mamish. And the person becomes like someone who can be called or considered a kofer ba'ikr, a denier of the basic principles of the Torah, that Hashem created the world and controls it forever. V'zehu, and this is what Chazal meant when they said, kol hakoes, anyone who becomes angry, afilu shchina eina chashuva kenegdo, even the divine presence no longer has significance or importance to that person in his anger. Ulehefech, but it's just the opposite, mi shemochel. Someone who forgives the other person, someone who says, you insulted me, you humiliated me, you hurt me, but I'm mochel you, I forgive you. God forbid I don't want to take revenge. God forbid I don't want there to be a machlokes. I'm mochel. Such a person is showing that he or she knows absolutely that Hashem controls the world, and everything that happens and that person experiences is from the Ratzon Hashem, is from the will of Hashem, and that's why they depart from all machlokas, they forgive other people, and they follow the right path, which is based on true emunah and bitachon Hashem and in Hashem, as opposed to people who allow themselves to, so to speak, forget or put Hashem to the side and take things personally and continue arguments and insult other people and humiliate other people and continue these problems, as opposed to resolving them and forgiving others. The Zera Shimshon has gone to great length in this piece to talk about the very important lessons that we all need to learn from the story of Korach, and to learn from the mistakes that Korach and his followers made, and to appreciate the tzelem Elokim that's present in every member of Klal Yisrael, and therefore how to treat them, and how to act with them and towards them, and react even if sometimes they might act towards us in a negative way. Yasher koch to everyone who joined in the learning tonight. God willing, we'll learn in the Zera Shimshon on next week's Parsha again next week.